This is Jim Veltman, and you're listening to Pro Lacrosse Talk.
On Schreiber.
Sidearm went, scores!
Now it's one. Padel scores! Hands off for Ravel, switches hands and scores!
Carly Miller showing off those shifty skills.
Right off the bat, there's Lyle Thompson!
With the first overall pick, the New York Riptide are proud to announce Jeff Teat as our pick in the NLL 2020 Draft.
Welcome to Season 2 of the Pro Lacrosse Talk Podcast, the voice of Pro Lacrosse. I'm Hutton, he's Adam, and together we're bringing you interviews from all your favorite players and coaches, as well as news and analysis from all 4 professional lacrosse leagues. Welcome to another episode of Pro Lacrosse Talk. I'm here with my co-host Adam Moore. This is episode 113 of the Pro Lacrosse Talk Podcast, and today's episode is all about the NLL. We're going to be discussing our favorite picks as well as providing you some exclusive interviews with GMs and players who were drafted this past Thursday. But before we dive in, Adam, I want to know your thoughts on this virtual draft.
Yeah, I thought it went really, really well. You know, Devin, Teddy, and Stamper really did an awesome job analyzing every pick. Even through the hiccups from the technical difficulties, they worked through those really, really well. They're all professionals and did a fantastic job answering questions and really, you know, bringing the box game to a bigger audience. I think because of the downtime, I think they had a lot more viewers in from the lacrosse world that, you know, may not have potentially had too much background in the box game themselves. So it's exciting time for the NLL, exciting time for that crew, and kudos to them for doing a fantastic job.
You know, I was impressed too with how they were able to get so many interviews with the players following that as well. You know, you had live reactions for the most part to the players that were drafted, which I think is big too, because you saw Steve Govett tweet out that, you know, in the past he was calling people and informing them, you know, days, even weeks after, letting them know that they were drafted. Now for it to be instantaneous and for players to, you know, be reacting in real time, I think that's, you know, is a testament to where the league's come. You know, it's come a long way and it continues to grow. And again, yeah, shout out to all those guys on the broadcast, you know, to deal with those hiccups, because it's not easy when you're live streaming an event. Technical glitches happen, and they rolled with the punches, and they picked up right where they left off, and I thought they did a fantastic job as well for those first 3 rounds, which were really, really long. And, you know, the whole draft entirely, you know, went from 7 to, I think, you know, 7 Eastern time to definitely past midnight.
Yep.
So yeah, again, great job for them. 93 picks is a lot. 93, you know, NLL hopefuls that, you know, get a chance to prove their worth. And we're going to talk a little bit about those picks. But we got to talk to some of the GMs that made those decisions. They'll give you a little bit of insight on how they thought their draft went. So here we have some interviews with Riptide GM Jim Veltman, Warriors GM Dan Richardson, Knighthawks GM Dan Carey, Black Wolves coach and GM Glenn Clark, Thunderbirds owner GM Curt Styres, Mammoth GM Brad Self, Swarm Coach Ed Comeau, Wings coach and GM Paul Day, Rock owner and GM Jamie Dawick, and the Calgary Roughnecks top 2 picks in the draft, Tanner Cook and Harrison Matsuoka. So a lot of people right there that you get to hear from. So without further ado, let's toss it to them. I'm here with Riptide GM Jim Veltman. First, Jim, congrats on a great draft. We'll start off with the biggest news. You guys took Jeff Teat, number 1 overall. I don't think it was any surprise to anyone, but talk to me a little bit about, you know, making that pick number 1 overall, and what about Jeff Teat's game excites you about him suiting up for the Riptide eventually?
What's not to get excited about when you talk about Jeff Teat? He's an all-world player. We're really excited. I mean, obviously, when I took this job, one of the reasons why I took it is because, you know, he was targeted as our number 1 pick right off the bat. It was interesting because I had maybe one GM call me about a possible trade for that number 1 pick, and I right away nixed it right away and made it very clear that we weren't interested in moving that pick at all right from the get-go.
Awesome. Yeah, and then talk to me a little bit about, too, you know, Matt Boschno was your first pick in the 2nd round. You actually had 4 picks in that round, so we'll get to the 3 other ones later. But what about him, too, excites you? And was he kind of, you know, obviously you kind of had to play the waiting game with him to make sure he was still available. But when you finally found out you could land him, what made you pull the trigger on him?
Yeah, we were kind of worried. We thought Matt would go a little earlier than he did. We were trying to trade up, but teams weren't budging. They wanted to hang on to their picks before we picked 17. So we were waiting patiently, and we targeted one of the areas of our weaknesses that we feel is our righty D position. So we were looking for players in that particular position, and we had him ranked number 1 on our righty Ds. And so when he fell to 17th, we couldn't have been more overjoyed. I don't know if a lot of people know. I mean, he's small in stature, but he, plays with a big heart. He's learned to play that way all his life. And another element that he brings is a face-off element, which really intrigued us, and he's very good at loose balls. So there was a lot of parts about his game that we really liked.
Awesome. And then, as I mentioned, you had 3 other picks. You took Ty Thompson, Andrew Brogatti, and Larson Sundown. What about those 3 guys? You took a bunch of different position groups there. Helped you, improve going into next season.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Brogatti was one of those picks that maybe people had ranked him a little higher than what we picked him, but we kind of, again, we were targeting that righty D position, and something that Andrew brings is he used to play out of the offensive door, so he can play both ends of the floor, which is kind of nice, so he can stay and play in transition, which we were targeting that area as well because we want to improve in our transition game. So he brought that element. And then when Ty Thompson, again, when he was dropping and he was falling down the draft list, we were kind of surprised that he was still available. So we pulled the trigger on a trade. I mean, we lost John Wagner, which we're, kind of disappointed to lose. But even when I called John afterwards, I said, look, it's nothing against you at all, but teams were inquiring about you. And we felt that, the value of what we would get back was just too great. So unfortunately, we did have to trade you. And so we had that conversation with John, and he understood. And then when we could pick up Ty Thompson, when we did, we pulled the trigger on that trade with Rochester, where we're also getting a Jay Thornbear, who we think can make our lineup, and also Daryl Robertson. So we have 3 players that can make our lineup, we feel, in Ty Thompson, Jay Thornbear, and Daryl Robertson in that pick. And then Larson Sundown, again, is another pick that kind of fell down the list. We projected him going higher. And when he did, we kind of looked at each other and we said, he's still on the board. We got to take the best available. So we took Larson. We're very happy with him. We think he brings another element to what we need on offense. I mean, Jeff Teat's an all-world player. He's got good vision in that, but he's a little smaller in stature. So we needed some guys who can, move bodies around and give Jeff the time and space that he needs to make plays. And then those guys have to be able to finish. You can't just move bodies and be open yourself. Like teams will be doubling Jeff a lot. So these guys have to be able to finish. So we were looking for big bodies that could finish, and Ty Thompson and Larson Sundown, they both fit that bill.
Awesome. And then I got to talk about your 4th round pick, who you're obviously very familiar with, Chris Veltman, your son. Talk about how special it was for you to pick him and draft him on the Riptide.
It was very special. I mean, Chris and I have quite a bond together. I've been coaching him ever since he was 4 years old. So to see him selected, I know all the hard work and effort that he puts in, and he's still doing that. So is he ready for this level? Maybe not, but what I see is someone with potential that we can hang on to, and that we can develop and mature when he's ready. And again, he's another righty D guy that can transition the ball, and he can score in transition. He used to play offense as a kid. He's transitioned into a D guy, but we had that special moment actually afterwards. I called him, and it was that great father-son moment that I'll never forget. It was one of those moments that we could share, and we could reflect on all the hard work that he's put in, and the time and effort that we both put in into coaching and into playing.
That's awesome. And then my final question is, one of your first GM decisions was actually the hiring of Dan Ladouceur, who was a teammate of yours on the Toronto Rock. So talk to me a little bit about what made Dan a good fit, and how excited are you to be kind of reunited with him in a way, with him being, on the bench and you being GM?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I have to clarify the story. Is I actually didn't hire Dan. Actually,
okay.
Dan and I were hired at the same time. Like literally, Rich was communicating with both of us about the possibility. Dan was moving from an assistant position to a head position. I think he was offered the GM position as well, but he felt that he wasn't quite ready to take on both after being an assistant. So that's when Rich kind of reached out to me and said, hey, look, we're thinking about Dan for head coach, but we still need a GM. Are you interested? And when I heard his name, thrown into the mix, Dan and I have a close relationship. We're friends even off the floor. So I asked Rich, is it okay if I text Dan? Because I know him. So I did. I texted Dan. I said, hey, do you know that I'm being considered for the GM position? And he said, yeah, I know that. So that's the reason why we both were very interested in this position, because it's one of those positions that you got to kind of do a lot of collective work together. So, the triumvirate of myself and Dan and Rich, it just fit very nicely.
All right, so Dan, just to start, you entered the draft with the number 3 pick, finally having a first rounder for the first time in 6 years. First, how nice was it to be able to pick in this first round?
It's something that we've been waiting for since we got involved with Connect Sports and Entertainment and over the club. It's actually 7 years since we had a pick, so it's something that we were very cognizant of, and so this is the start of the 3rd year, and so our scouting staff and coaches and myself were quite excited. It was like Christmas Day last Thursday that we were able to actually participate wholeheartedly in the draft.
No, that's awesome. And you guys ended up, you had the 3rd pick, you trade up to the 2nd pick, you take Reed Bowering, who was your guy. So talk to me a little bit about his game and why he was the perfect fit for your guys' first selection.
Well, we sort of got wind that a couple other teams in the West were inquiring with Rochester to leapfrog us at 3 up to 2. And obviously that was to secure the rights to Reed as well. And we've been watching Reed for the last 2 years, and we just really like his game. We sort of look at him as the next Alan Rogers or Zach Currier that can play D and move the ball up the floor and participate in the offensive end, and his leadership ability on and off the floor is noted. And anybody that you talk to, his coaches and the Coquitlam juniors or with Drexel speak highly of this young man. And so we, did what we had to do as far as the trade to secure the rights to that number 2 pick so that we could get Reed, who's obviously a local kid. Mm-hmm. On our agenda too is to, we asked ourselves, how many times is a kid of this talent going to be available when we're picking? And it doesn't happen very often. So we made the choice to move up, and we're glad that we did.
No, that's great. And you guys really made defense the priority. You took 6 defenders, including Reed, and then a goalie as well. So talk to me a little bit about making defense a priority in this draft.
Well, we'd done some previous trades and free agency around our offense. So we were fairly comfortable. Coach Gill and his staff were fairly comfortable with our offense. And where we felt we needed to beef up was goaltending and our defense. And that's why you saw us stay on that end of the floor. So we now have really upped our depth on the defensive end. That's where we felt last year when we got some injuries. The players that we had, there was a bit of a drop off in the talent level of the guys that had been hurt. So, the other thing to remember is we secured the rights to Brett Midsky last year. He had to sit out a year because of firefighting. So he's like getting a second first round pick. So that's ready to go. And, we think that Nick Village is coming along nicely. And then you throw in the guys that we got in the draft. We think we've really improved our DN.
That's awesome. Then talk to me a little bit about Mateo Tack, one of the 5 goaltenders taken in this draft. What about his game made him an obvious choice for you guys to pick him?
Yeah, our coaching staff, including our goalie coach, Dwight Mechty, speaks very highly of Mateo. We think that he's got a big upside, and we're going to work with him, in the off-season of training camp or leading up to training camp. We just think that it's an untapped resource. We're just getting the paperwork done. We're also going to bring in another goaltender, free agent, on top of the 2 that we already have. So we'll have 4 goalies in camp. And, Mateo's got a great attitude, and he's a good ball stopper. So we're going to, see what he has in camp, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Well, Dan, thank you so much for the time, and I appreciate it. Best of luck going into this upcoming season.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me on.
Hey, Dan, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. I appreciate you hopping on with me. It won't take too much of your time, but I thank you for taking some time out of your day to talk to us. And
No worries at all.
good draft. Let's start off. You guys were definitely the busiest team, I think, of the draft. You turned some picks into 3 already NLL players, as well as added 5 in the draft. Talk to me a little bit about that first move where you guys traded down from number 2 to number 3, but then you acquired a second-round pick as well. What kind of led to that decision?
Well, we were pretty happy to be in the position we were going into the draft with that number 2 pick. A few teams had some interest in that pick, and I believe Vancouver was just wanting to make sure that they ended up with the guy that they were hoping for. So it seemed to make sense, and we still ended up with Ryan Smith, who ultimately, that was the guy that we were really hoping to get once we, kind of got deep into this draft and the preparation for it. So it seemed to make sense, knowing that they wanted to protect that player that they got, which was Reed Bowering at the number 2 pick. And we were able to, to get an additional second-round pick, 28th overall, which we ended up using to acquire Jeff Wittig from Colorado. So one of our needs was we felt to make our whole team deeper and add some depth to our roster in different aspects, but definitely on our left side offensively, and Jeff Wittig did that for us.
Absolutely. So you add Wittig. You also added Matt Gilray and John Wagner. Was that kind of your plan going into it, or did you guys kind of, roll with the punches and see what was out there during the draft?
Well, they were all players that we had tried to and had been working on for weeks. Okay. Jeff Wittig, I was in Colorado when we brought him in, and I just like his presence. He's a big body that can play a role on that left side. So we liked him. There's a lot of conversations throughout the process that you have, and both sides want to make sure they're comfortable with the agreements. So he was one, and then obviously Matt Gilray, like to me he's a world-class defender and guy that can really push the ball. So our staff is very familiar with him. Mike Hazen and Matt Giles have coached him. Matt Giles coached him in Junior A in Peterborough, and Mike Hazen with the senior team in Peterborough. So they're very familiar with him and how good he is. So in order to get a quality player like that, you have to give a lot up. And, in order to make our team better, we felt, with his age and where we're at and what our needs are, it was important to be able to give up our first-round pick to acquire him. So, again, the guy that we're really excited for, and it just makes our team a lot deeper defensively. And John Wagner, I've had, I don't know how many conversations over the last month with New York, and he was a guy that we really felt would be a good fit for us. The other 2, we had the agreements basically done before the draft started, and that one was kind of pending on who was left for New York to pick at 25. So it all played out kind of how we hoped it would. And there's definitely some players that we would have loved to have more draft picks to acquire, but we're happy with the guys that we were able to and the draft picks that we feel are really going to help with our competition.
No, awesome. And then talk to me a little bit about, Ryan Smith as well, your top pick. What did you see from his game, both in junior A, college, that kind of prompted you to take him at 3 overall?
As talented as he is, the thing that stands out to us the most and to me the most was his character and just the feedback and what you hear and how just great of a person he is. So we have what we believe a really solid group of character guys in our locker room. So that was just like, there was so much appeal knowing, the type of person that he is. And then you watch him on the floor and see how, the dominant he can be with his size and his strength and scoring ability. So I think he's got a ton of upside. He can step in and play and contribute right away. And he's the type of player and person that I believe is going to continue to work on his strengths and his weaknesses and become, a well-rounded player, in a few years in the NLL.
No, awesome. And then talk to me a little bit about your 4 other draft picks. You got Kevin Owen, transition player, Jared Connors, Mitch Ogilvie, and then John Vesna. So you got a little bit on the defense, a little bit forwards. Good mix there. What did you see from those 4 guys that make you excited for them to, when they finally suit up for the Knighthawks?
This was an interesting draft, and you started to see guys go early that we may not have had on our depth chart as early as they went. And I'm sure the same goes for some of the players that we chose. Maybe, they could have and would have been there a little bit later, but we decided to use our 19 pick and our 25 pick to acquire players, and ultimately the 28 for guys that, have that NLL experience and we know what we're going to get. And the other guys, there's a lot of appeal. So the group that you mentioned, we have, there's a little bit of everything there as far as the positions. And we had a ton of discussion about a lot of players, but those players in particular were guys that we were really hoping to get. And, Owen Hill is a guy that we believe could really kind of step in, and it might take him a little bit of time, but he's a very intelligent player, and I think that's going to help him succeed at this level. Jared Connors, you watch him play field lacrosse, and he is a specimen. He controls and has such an influence in a game. And if that can translate to box lacrosse, which we believe, the traits that he has can, and if he invests into it, then he'll be a scary player to play against. So, there's a lot of appeal there. Mitch Ogilvie was a guy that we know fairly well. And again, another character player in person. And he's one of those guys that just gets the job done, and he'll find a way to be successful. And they covered the first 4, right?
Yeah.
And then John was a guy that we ended up, we wanted to find a way to get him, and we were considering with that 54 pick when we took Mitch, we were considering John there as well. I know Mike Hazen and Pat O'Toole are familiar with him from junior in Brampton, and we decided to find a way to get him and draft him, and I think it shows that he's a guy that we felt was important as well. So we gave up a future 5th round pick to acquire him a 70th overall pick. So group of guys that, again, they're going to come in. Our hope is to push the players that were on our roster last year and just become more competitive. 2-10 isn't acceptable for us, even though we felt like we were better than our record shows. These guys are going to come in and really push and make us a more competitive team.
No, awesome. And then my final question is, talk to me a little bit about being in the draft war room. How was that experience, especially with the draft being virtual? Was it a little bit different, or was it about the same?
It was different, but I think once you kind of get going and as long as you have the information from the league, which we did, you see the picks coming in, and ultimately you can't walk over to one of the other team tables, but you find a way. And I think that's why, we pre-draft, we had a lot of our conversations done. And there's not a lot of time even during a draft. If you're in the same room, usually you have those conversations prior to, and there's times where, you have to step away from your table to go explore an opportunity or an option that may be there. So for us, it was nice to be. We were at the Blue Cross Arena. We felt comfortable. We had been preparing there over the last few weeks, and ultimately it worked out for us. So during these times, it's what we have to do to make this work. So it seemed to work out okay.
Ruest was massive for us. I mean, he's somebody we've been after for a while, and the price has always been fairly high. And to be honest, we kind of got lucky last night because there was somebody on the board at 18 that they really wanted, and they had excess righties. So it was one of those things where everything just kind of aligned, and they got what they wanted, and we really got what we wanted. So it was good because we wanted Ruest, to be honest, for a couple of years. We were looking at him last year and the year before to come in as that third righty to complement with Joe and Callum. And I love his game. I mean, I kind of describe him as a bit of a Riley O'Connor type of guy. Maybe with a little bit similar type player, like really active, good smart player, plays hard minutes all the time, and is just a real good pro. So we were absolutely thrilled that we had the opportunity to get him. And I think with Rouet and Joe, and then some of those other pieces that we've got in there, we're going to be good. We're going to be, our lefties are still our lefties, and they're very good. And I think we're just going to have a balanced attack of weapons that can hurt you all over the floor.
You took Kitchen with your top pick, 24th overall. U.S. guy, but obviously has some box experience. What kind of led to you drafting him?
Well, I coached him. So his box experience was with me in Toronto. He came up and played a summer of junior A with us, with myself, Clem, and Mike McKay. So I coached him for a summer. He was playing with one of our kids, one of our Canadian kids that was down at Delaware. And so he wanted to come up and try the box game, and was very good. He was, to be honest, he was exceptional with our group, and playing against, the Ontario Junior A League produces some of the, the best players and the toughest competition for that age group for these guys. And he was outstanding. So to be honest, that trade we made earlier with New York to get the 18th pick, that had everything to do with getting Charlie Kitchen. And in fact, nobody knows this, but part of that trade was New York kept the 17th pick, but we had exclusion where they couldn't take Kitchen. So that's how much we wanted him. And that was our plan all along, was to take him with the 18th pick. And then what happened was, as the board changed and Colorado wanted to get the 18th pick, we started looking at what was after that and who was going to take what. And in our minds, it became we were pretty confident that he was going to bounce to 24. So in our minds, with the 18th and the 33rd pick, we got Kitchen and Rouet. And we were going to take Kitchen at 18 anyway. So it couldn't have, the way it turned out for us was absolutely perfect. We really wanted Kitchen, and we really think he's going to be a good NLL player, but he isn't available until the following year. And we thought that getting Rouet was very important, because you're always taking care of the here and the now and the future, and the challenge is trying to balance those two. So we thought it lined up very well for us. To be honest, we couldn't be happier. So we got Rouet, we got Kitchen, and that's really what we wanted out of this draft. And Sowers and Ament were two guys we had ranked actually quite high, and didn't think they would be in the mix, because we didn't go to like 41 and 65 and whatever it was. But they ended up both being there too. So we were pretty happy with the way it all shook down, to be honest.
Good. Then is Ament, has he given any inclination whether he's going to show for training to see if he can make the roster?
I spoke to him today. I had a good conversation with him today, and he is certainly interested, certainly intrigued. We're going to follow up. I mean, he was saying he wants to talk to his family, talk to some different things, and see how much he wants to dive into the indoor game. But he certainly sounded intrigued. There was no guarantees attached to the conversation. But he's an exciting prospect, and he was one of those guys we looked at and thought, watching his outdoor game, had some very good transferable skills to the indoor game. So, we're excited about what that looks like as a prospect. We're not border specific when we evaluate talent. Like we look at what we like and what we think is good. Charlie Kitchen, obviously we had a sample size with him in the beach. and really liked his game and thought it would transfer to the NLL. So, we had him on our radar. We liked Thowers and Ament, and they just, when those picks became available, we just thought they were the best options for us. So I think some of it is coincidental. Some of it is, we're not locked into a border specific pick. I mean, we like what we like, and we're not concerned whether it's, U.S., Canada. Like we don't really, it's not really a factor for us. So I think it's probably just as simple as that. We just we like what we like, and if it's there, we take it.
So following up on that, Glenn, just a little bit, tell us a little bit too, like, did you guys have conversations about maybe taking players that would be available this coming season? Or, obviously you guys had the best record in the league last year. So were you comfortable going into this season saying, hey, we're going to get some prospects that we know will pan out in 2 years, but right now we feel comfortable with the roster we have?
Yeah, no, the conversation was, as it played out, was exactly what we wanted to do. So we definitely wanted to get, Charlie Kitchen was a big target for us. We wanted him. But we also wanted an offensive righty. And Rouet was one of 3 guys currently playing that we wanted. So we thought we needed a proven, veteran NLL guy that could support Joe on the right side in particular, but the rest of our offensive group, just to give them a little bit more depth. Because we have some exciting young guys. We got Tanner Thompson. We signed Jules Hennenberg, Brad Smith. We still have Davey Amala. We've got some pieces there, but we wanted some sort of proven and veteran help, to support Joe, and then have those guys fill in around that. So, no, we wanted to add to that, which, Rouet was exactly not only the player we wanted, but the type of player we wanted.
I got to bring up a little bit too about Jamison. Obviously you re-sign him. I know Halifax was interested. How big is it to have, the reigning NLL goaltender of the year back on your roster after, that what was kind of a little bit of a crazy free agency period?
Well, goaltending's big in this league. So, there's probably, I don't know if you look around, 6 or 7 goalies that, teams are comfortable winning with. And we have one of them. So, you certainly want to be comfortable in your goaltending position, and you want to be in a position where you've got one of those guys. So we've got one of those guys. So that, that gives you confidence that you're in a position to win.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about tonight. We come in looking to get better, and I really believe we got better with picking up Riggs and Tyson Bell, Tara Franco. Really excited about those picks. We're very happy that Riggs was still there. I think if they played the summer ball, I really believe that he would have been, people would have had a better look at him, and he would have probably went a lot higher. Tyson Bell's a great player, and then when you have a chance to get somebody of that caliber, it's always best. You got to do what you have to do to get him, and we're fortunate enough that we found we had the right pieces that Calgary needed, and we're very thankful that we were able to get it done.
Thank you for hopping on. Won't take too much of your time. Congrats too on a great draft in the 2020 draft. You guys drafted 11 players total. Let's talk first off with drafting Ron John. You guys traded Jacob Ruest in order to acquire that 18th pick and selected Ron John at that 18th pick in the second round. What made you trade up to get him?
Ron was the guy that we had ranked much higher than 18th. We had been in contact with New England for a little bit leading up to the draft and during the draft. And they had interest in Jacob. And he's someone that was a real important part of our team and had been for a while. And it wasn't an easy decision, but given the fact that we had added Tyler Digby last year and the growth and development of Ryan Lee, and then again adding Zed Williams in the off season. We have to get real good depth to the right side, and again for the fact that we had Ron John ranked so high, was a player that we felt we could play all over the floor. Put him at the back door on D, but it has the ability to stay and play all on the offensive side and also on our ball team. So again, a lot of different factors played a part in that, and we're excited to add a player of his caliber. And although he's going back to school at University of Albany, we may not see him for a couple of years. We're real excited about adding him to our organization.
Yeah, no, he was projected to possibly go in the first round. So you guys definitely, landed a top talent. You guys weren't done adding in that second round either. You had 5 picks total in that round. You also added Brett McIntyre, Jordan Trottier, Jalen Chaster, and Tyler Scavor. Talk to me a little bit about adding those 4 guys in the second round.
Yeah, Brett, actually a part of the Ron John deal was the fact that, Brett was still available. He just like Ron, were 2 players we had ranked in our first round. So, still uncertain, obviously 4 picks later from 18 to 22, but we were confident with Patrick Dodd still being on the board that we were going to get what we felt was Brett McIntyre at 22, and losing Jacob to add Ron John, but knowing that more than likely we were going to be able to add a righty of Brett's caliber who we had ranked in the first round was real exciting for us, and someone that was, again, real high on our draft rankings in the first round. So, we're real excited about adding him to our team. Again, another player that's gone back to school that we may not see for a couple of years, but somebody that our entire coaching staff was high on and are excited to see in our lineup, and someone that's going to create offense for us. So that was an important part of the being able to trade Jacob for Ron, knowing that we were thinking that we were going to be able to get Brett McIntyre at 22. So and then after that, Jordan Trottier, the guy that our head coach Pat Coyle, an assistant GM, was real high on, having played against him, or his team played against his team in the BC Junior League. Was a big, strong, physical guy, played with an edge, and it's kind of the direction we're gone in the last 2 drafts when possible, and again, another big, strong, physical guy that's going to come in and compete for a spot on our back end, and we liked his character and we liked his play. From there, Jalen Chaster was somebody that, again, played for Pat Coyle and Jason Bishop, who's our Western scout. They couldn't say a bad thing about him as far as personality, character, but also as a player. Not, as big and physical as Jordan, but somebody that, from defense to offense to loose balls to high lacrosse IQ, they couldn't say a bad thing about him, and just said that good things happen around him. So, that was important for us to add someone like that. Again, we like his versatility and the ability that he has. He's somebody that will go out the back door for us, but again, they're a player that played majority of his youth as an offensive player, and feel confident that he could go out and contribute on the offensive side of the ball. So that's exciting. And then Tyler Seaver is a kid that has played for our assistant coach, Andy McBride. He speaks real highly about, and is, a defensive first type of player, big, strong, physical. And honestly, every single person that we talked to about Tyler didn't have a bad thing to say about him personally, and also it's just about his character and how he prepares and trains and approaches the game. And again, we're excited when we can add kids or people like that, especially when they haven't played professionally yet, knowing that they're going to come in and adjust to that side of things immediately. So again, we're real excited about the 5 players we added in our second round.
And then like I mentioned, you added 11 total. In later rounds, you added 3 Americans in Pattis Lannion, Jared Bernhardt, and Peter Dirth. Talk to me about their game, and what have you seen from their field game that makes you think that they can excel in the box game?
I'll talk about Pat and Peter. I think, when we watch, the U.S. field players, I think there has been, and we've brought in guys in the past who are long sticks, long poles, whatever you want to call them, who are high-end guys. But it has been noticeable, the transition from a long pole to a short stick in training camp, that it hasn't been an easy transition for those players. So, we've kind of focused our attention on the short stick. The middies who are already used to using a short stick were playing on the defensive side of the ball. Pat, for us, wasn't necessarily on our radar until the MLL season happened, and somebody that continually just stood out every game that we watched. And he wasn't somebody that we were kind of keying in on. And after every game, we'd have takeaways and be like, man, the Aslanian kid just played great D, was hard on the ball, played hard. When he got it, he made the right plays. He has a background in basketball. So he although, the field lacrosse game is different on the defensive side of the ball, he's familiar with switching off picks, communicating picks. So that was something that stood out to us when we talked to him. And someone who expressed interest in playing box. It's also important for us, right? So, and Peter was somebody who we started talking to late, didn't have a ton of communication with. Again, he's at Syracuse, so we didn't get to watch him play pro, but was a second team All-American as a short stick D midi. Clearly someone who's big, strong, physical, and athletic. So again, those were keys to, and expressed interest in playing box lacrosse. So he helped Syracuse be one of the top nationally ranked teams, right? So was a big part of their success this past season. So he's not coming for a couple of years, but excited to see him come to camp and compete for a job in a couple of years.
And then talk to me, moving away from the draft a little bit, talk to me, you mentioned the addition of Zed Williams. You also added Connor Robinson this offseason. What about these two guys excites you that they're going to be in the Mammoth uniform next season?
Yeah, for different reasons, I guess different and similar reasons. Both were high draft picks. One 2 years ago, one maybe 3 years ago. Certainly Zed, right? It's hard not to be excited about him. Again, our season gets cut short, and he was having a really good one, but playing still not top minutes, given that he was in Georgia and with Lyle Thompson and Randy there. Still wasn't playing as much as he will with us. And then, we make that deal. It wasn't an easy one, when you have to give up your captain, but an area of need for us on the offensive side of the ball. And then he goes and does what he does for the PLO. So, and he plays top minutes. So I think, everyone's capable or was able to see what he's capable of. And like I said, he's going to get increased minutes on our team this season. And, it's hard not to be excited about all the things that he has to offer in terms of size, skill set, compete level, ability to play within an offense. So all those things were important and the reasons why we went and pursued him. And for Connor Robinson, maybe not as dynamic a player, but was a top 5 pick in his draft year, somebody that we've been high on for a while. Heard nothing but great things from people that played against or with him in the summertime. He's somebody that's put up points all throughout his junior career and in his first 2 years of senior lacrosse out in BC. Somebody who's, can play with the ball without it. He's not quite as tall as Zed, but he's also physically strong. So again, another important part of kind of the direction we want to go in, and is getting a little bit bigger and stronger. And I think, again, given the fact that he's going to get more minutes with us, I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised at how good of a player Connor is.
I think that's great. I think you guys had an excellent draft, good off season. We're looking forward to seeing you guys hitting the floor this upcoming season. Brad, thank you for your time, and best of luck going forward.
No problem. Thank you.
We're here with Ed Comeau, head coach of the Georgia Swarm. Ed, let's start off with the first round. You guys had 4 picks in the first round, and you addressed quite a few areas. Talk to us about the picks of Robert Hudson, Jeff Heinrich, and Ethan Walker.
John's done a great job over the last number of years, and not just this past year, really being able to stockpile some first-round draft picks. So to be able to have 4 draft picks in the first round is exceptional, and we're very pleased with that. And we knew based on the caliber of players that were available this year, we were going to get several very good players. So pretty exciting draft for us this year. Robert Hutson is a guy that we can use right away. We did lose some defensive players this year with Brendan Bomberry is going to be moving up to the front door, and Jason Noble being traded, and Alex Krepensek leaving, and Leo Staros being traded. So there's a number of picks that we needed to address the defensive end. So certainly we've got some guys that are waiting in the wings. Last year we had Kaysen Tarbell, Ryan McSpadgen, and we have TJ Comicio. So we expect those guys to battle, but we certainly wanted some young guys to come in the roster as well. So Robert Hutson's a guy who can really fill that spot right away, and he's ready for us now and ready to play. So he's really excited. We're very happy to get him. And then our next pick, Heinrich, getting him at 8 was really a shock to us. We never thought he'd fall that low, but I think some teams have that situation where they need a player immediately, and we were able to look at some other picks and say, hey, let's build for the future. And he's a leader on every team he's been on. He's been a captain. Real excited to have him, down the road for us. And then Ethan Walker, another guy who's finishing his college eligibility, but certainly a left-handed goal scorer, offensive player, someone that every team loves to build and have depth at the left side. So that's something that we thought was really important, especially for the future for us. So, and then with our last pick, we picked a goalie, Lane Hruska, out of Saskatchewan. Really big upside to him, really committed, came last winter to play in the ALL in Ontario. So we know he's really committed to playing and improving. And so, yeah, we were very happy with our picks and very excited to look forward to getting the season going and getting to see these guys out there with us.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And let's talk a little bit more about Lane. What is it going to mean for his development to sit behind a guy like Pooley and learn from such a chiseled veteran?
Well, that's one of the real things in this league. It's, it's kind of the unwritten rule is that when you came into the league, you had a veteran guy help you develop. And then when you become a veteran guy, you help young guys develop. And I would say the majority of our players in our league follow that. I think there's some that are a little too protective maybe of their own domain, that they're not that interested in helping others. But Mike Poulin's had great mentors, Bob Watson, Anthony Cosmo, and a number of others. And he's really embodied that to say, hey, I'm going to help the guys that are eventually going to take my spot. And he knows that. And whether that's, because Mike retires and he gets older or the other guys start to play really well, Mike knows that's part of the game. Sure. But I think for Lane, he's very fortunate to have that, and he's going to benefit from it. And we also have Kevin Orleman on our roster, and Kevin's another guy who he's benefited from getting help from Mike and others, and he's going to share his experience as well as a backup. So I think it's a great situation for Lane. Maybe not necessarily looking for him to come in to play right away, but knowing that we have some depth there, and certainly I think everyone felt he was the number one goalie in the draft.
Absolutely. And then some other guys that you drafted in Sam Firth and Tanner Buck, 2 lefties that are eligible to play this upcoming season as well. What did you see from them that made you select them?
Well, I think Sam's a goal scorer, and I think he said it in his interview when he learned what a lot of players have to learn when they go to the pro level, is that when he went from junior B to junior A, he learned the importance of playing without the ball in the stick, and that's something that's really critical. When you get to the pro level, if you come to the Georgia Swarm, if you expect you're going to have the ball in your stick more than Randy Stocks, Shane Jackson, and Lyle Thompson, then you're in for a real disappointment. So I think he's got the right mindset, and he's had success. He had put a lot of points up in junior B, and then was a real good addition to Orangeville last year, helping them win a Minto. And I think Tanner Buck is from John Arlotta really liked Tanner, and really likes his compete level, and not the biggest guy in the world, but battles really hard, and we really want guys to come into camp, and we want to have a camp where it's open for guys like that to battle for a spot. And whether it's a roster spot, which is tough on our team, but certainly a practice roster spot, and we say to guys, when you come to a pro camp, it's an opportunity, not just to come to the camp, but even if you get released from a team, every general manager in the league sees that correspondence. So your name's out there. So it's a great opportunity for these young guys to come in and really try to earn themselves a spot for the future.
Awesome. And, kind of going off of that, two guys that hopefully will be looking to earn a spot this potential season is two more guys that will be eligible to play in Americans, Miles Silva and Reese Eddy. You've had tons of success with Americans kind of transitioning from the field to the box game, guys like Joel White, Matt Dunn. What really enticed you about their game and potential?
Well, I think John Arlotta does a lot of homework on guys, and that homework includes talking to their college coaches, talking to teammates, talking to people that have played against them that we have relationships with. So there was definitely with Matt, there was definitely a lot of interest in his ability and again his compete level, and we know he has a commitment through the armed services, so that's something that he's, we've got to work out with him, but we certainly hope we can have an opportunity to have him come to camp and compete. And again, John, one of the mottos and the really driving force behind the Swarm is we say it takes talent to play in the NLL, but it takes character to play for the Swarm, and that's something that John does a lot of work, and we really vet our draft picks to make sure that we have character guys, and Matt fills that role. And I think Reese really impressed us watching the PLL, and we don't get to watch tons of college lacrosse. We have some people watching for us, but certainly he did a great job stepping in, playing against some top level players. And the challenge is always whether a guy can transition from the field game to the box game. But as you said, there's lots of examples in our league of guys that have, especially out the D door, and we think Reese has got a chance to come in and really try to earn a spot. And it is tough though. I mean, the odds are always stacked against those guys just because of the makeup of our team. But we like to think they come to camp, they get to work with some really great players. We try to give them some good direction, and a great example is Isaiah Davis Allen. He was at our camp a couple of years ago, and we really liked Isaiah. We thought he was a great player. He just didn't quite fit in at that point based on our numbers, but the experience he got, and he was able to turn that into a starting position in Philly. So we love to see that, and we, as much as when we draft guys, we want them to play with us and finish their careers with us. We also know that sometimes guys end up on other teams, and no different than guys that other teams draft will end up on our team. So it's but we're happy to see those guys, and we definitely want to see more American players coming through the college ranks, whether they have box experience, which is great through the collegiate box leagues, or whether they come and do some on-the-job training. But certainly it's great to see, and I have to say the attitude and the work ethic of many of the American players we draft is just phenomenal. They want to learn, and they really want to get better. And that's, as a coach, that's really what you want to hear and what you love about your players.
No, that's great. And then just moving on from the draft for a little bit, I have to talk about you traded Zed Williams to the Mammoth and acquired, their former captain, Dan Coates. Talk to us about making that move and acquiring Coates this offseason and how he's going to fit into the Swarm team.
Dan Coates, I'm fortunate enough that I coached him as an assistant coach when I was in Colorado, and then worked with him with Team Canada. And we last year during the season, before it was interrupted, we kind of talked about what we might have been missing out the D end, and part of it was a little bit of intensity and not necessarily toughness, but just intensity and grit. And Dan Coates is a guy that brings that. He's been a leader on every team he's been on. In fact, when we drafted him in Colorado, I remember Bob Hamley saying at the time, he'll be a future captain of the Mammoth, and he was right. And so, we bring in a guy, not only does he bring intensity and grit and focus, very serious guy. When the whistle starts, he's real serious. But also we bring in a leader as well. We've named him an assistant captain to take the role that was opened up when Jason Noble was traded. But it was tough to trade Zed. We really love Zed, and Zed really was developing into a great player, and we think he's going to have spectacular career, and we're nervous if our schedule shows Colorado on it, because we know how much damage he can do, and I feel bad for the Western teams that have to face him now. But we sometimes, to get a good player, you got to give up a good player, and that was kind of the mentality of that. And real happy to have Coates, and he fits in right away, knows a lot of our guys, is already talking to the coaches, talking to the players, and real happy to get him, and looking forward to having him part of the 2021 Swarm.
Hey, Coach Day, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining me. Again, congrats on a great draft. Let's start with your first pick, defender Jackson Subak, a member of UMass and Brooklyn Lacrosse Club. What made him the right choice in that first round?
Being in Philadelphia, we like big physical players. Our first year as an expansion team, we were kind of a real fast transitional team. And then last year we added some guys like Ian Lord, players with size. And then this summer we've added Brock Sorensen and Alex Krepensek, guys around 30. We were top 3 in defense last year, but we were average age 25. So one of the things in the off season we wanted to do was add some size, some more veterans, and we were able to do that. And, at that pick in the draft, he was the best player available, and I think he fits into where we want to be in the future. He's a big physical defenseman, but he also has really good feet. Obviously, 4-year starter at UMass, has a long pull, so he has great feet, and his compete level is great. He in the past, I watched him in the Minnow Cup fight some pretty tough guys, and nothing wrong with some toughness in Philadelphia. We really like that.
No, absolutely. And then leading up to your second round, you had back-to-back picks. You took Brian Costabile and Dylan Folds. Costabile doesn't have any box experience, but he made his debut with the PLL and can play this upcoming season when it occurs. And then Folds is returning to Penn State for another year. But talk to me a little bit about drafting these two players.
Well, I think Brian, obviously, his upside for the box game could be huge. He's big, fast, strong, can shoot the ball as well. And we wanted to add some speed. He's working in Baltimore at Under Armour. He's got a great job there. And if we can, if it all works out, we would be the closest team and the best fit for his career choice right now. Work Monday to Friday like everybody else, and then come in Friday night and practice and spend the weekend playing pro lacrosse. And what a great market. He'll fit in great. And then Dylan, had a great junior career at West. Had an excellent Minnow Cup against Dan Teat when Coquitlam won the Minto Cup in 2018. And looking to the future, Dallas Fort Worth expansion next year. We can only protect 5 offensive players. So he's a good kid that could step in and play right away. Obviously had a pretty good career so far at Penn State, 1 year older, and it's nice. It's not like he's a 21-year-old. We like kind of older players that have played against men before, and he could step in and play right away and be a contributor next year, and also, not have to be a number 1 guy and come in and get his feet wet with some pretty good offensive players around him. And he knows the box game, and his girlfriend's from Philly, so it's a perfect fit for him.
No, yeah, we like to see that he has a girlfriend. I know he went viral when that one Penn State game said he was looking for one. And it's good too. I think it's important that you guys are kind of thinking ahead too with this expansion draft that is coming up. You took another forward in Ben French, who plays for Vermont in the Coburg Kodiaks. Talk to me a little bit about him and what you see, how you see him fitting into this Wings offense.
Yeah, I think we wanted to get some young defensemen. B, we wanted to get some speed and transition, and then we wanted to get a left and a right for depth. And we know that the league's expanding over the next couple of years. So, Ben went to IMG, became a pretty good athlete at IMG, automatic success at Vermont. And I watched him in our league last year against men in major series lacrosse here in Ontario, and he had a good year and competed every night, and had to travel to games in Coburg and play on a young team, and he did really well. And now he's at Tampa getting his MBA, and it's another, he'll be 23, 24 years old, and he could be a good fit for us. he knows the box game, and another year at Tampa, he gets to spend another year playing lacrosse and getting bigger, stronger, and faster. And really out of the draft, if we could lose one forward, we want to make sure we have some depth at the left and right position.
And that makes sense. And then you had 4 final picks. 3 of those picks were Johns Hopkins Blue Jays in Mark Peon, Jack Rapine, and Cole Williams. Was that kind of the plan, or did it kind of just work out that way?
We talked to them quite a bit before the draft. We have great connection with Johns Hopkins, our assistant general manager, Joe Carlini in Philadelphia. He was a 4-year starter at Hopkins. So, he knows the players. Peon is good friends with Steph Charbonneau. He's another guy who went to IMG. He's from Montreal. He's from Quebec. Went to Harvard and then, played at Johns Hopkins. He's living in Baltimore, so it's a good fit for us. He knows the box game, and another guy who can grow with the group and play this year. And then Jack lives in Philly, played in the PLL. We like his physicality. And I think he fits into the box game real well with his physicality. And then Cole, John Grant, I've known John his whole life, so he reached out to Tracy Kluski and myself about Cole. He's a captain, 6'5" lefty. He shoots the ball well overhand, which is great for the indoor game. And he could be a sleeper pick down the road here. Great leader in Johns Hopkins, and another guy that hey, listen, it's an easy commute from Baltimore to Philadelphia, and we've got guys like Isaiah Davis-Allen already doing it successfully for us.
No, absolutely. And then before we end, I want to move away from the draft a little bit and talk about your big offseason acquisition in Ben McIntosh. You trade for him. He'll be coming from the Rush now, playing in Philly where he lives. Talk to me about adding a guy like Ben McIntosh to this roster.
Yeah, we're fortunate that he lives there. If he didn't live in Philly, and there's not a chance we'd be able to acquire him. So we're fortunate that he's going to marry a girl from Philly. And, he, to us, he's a top 3 right in the game. He doesn't have to have the ball in his stick to be successful, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
He does all the little things well. He's a great leader. He can score from the outside, inside. He's 29 years old. If you look at the top point getters in this league over the last 10 years are always in that 28 to 32-year-old range. He's in the prime of his career and very, very fortunate. His compete levels, outdoes his skill level, which is fantastic for us. The people in Philly will love him. We didn't want to lose a guy like Josh Carrier, but I think you had to give up something really, really good to get it. That being said, we need to improve our power play, and signing Corey Small really helps that. Small is a great shooter on the power play, but also a great feeder. And that lefty-righty combination should really help us on our power play. And, we're really excited to have both of those offensive players with us, that's for sure.
No, that's great. Well, Coach, I appreciate your time. Best of luck this off season and going into next season.
Hey, anytime. Appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Jamie, thank you for joining me. And let's dive right into your first pick in the draft. You take Tita Yerlin, in that second round, talented face-off specialist out of Yale, who you guys think can thrive in the box game. What made him a good pick in that second round?
Well, we think he was a good pick for multiple reasons, really. Number one, we feel like, not that there's not a spot for him necessarily now, but we feel like our team's pretty deep. So the concept of this year and someone being able to go back to school and then join us next year was appealing to us. But, we've been looking for a face-off guy for a while. We actually came pretty close with someone last year that ended up going somewhere else. And, it's been something on our radar, an area I think we were able to improve at. So, with the makeup of our team, we felt like, we feel like he's the best face-off guy in the game. And we didn't know going into the draft what his NLL aspirations were, but we just figured it was worth the potential high reward in making a pick like that. So, that's why we did it. I spoke to him very briefly following the draft because, you know, I can't really talk to him too much right now. I don't want to with them at school and this and that. But, you know, he seemed very excited about, you know, being drafted by the team and the potential of playing in the NLL. So that was even more exciting news for us the following day there with him.
No, that's great. And then, you know, followed up that pick with Phil Mazuka, a transition player. Talk to me a little bit about his game and why he made sense in that third round.
Well, kind of along the same lines of looking more down the road than right now. You know, Phil's a kid that I'm very familiar with. I've watched him play since he was probably a tyke, and you know, he declared early for the draft. He's still in school up here in Canada, Western, and you know, with his school load, I don't think he's got immediate you know, desire to try and play right away, which I also don't think he's really quite ready for. Having said that, you know, a year or two from now, you know, if he came out with his normal class, I think he'd be a first round pick and you know, picks that we've traded away to acquire some players. So that was another, you know, all our picks really this year were kind of more for down the road. Not to say some of the other guys we drafted later on might not come in and earn themselves a spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about some of those later round draft picks. With the exception of Scott Delzato, you guys were very defensive focused. Talk to me about these three defenders that you took in these later rounds.
Yeah, well, so in the third round, we took Chris Weir, you know, a guy that, you know, Bruce, our defensive coordinator and our assistant GM, is very familiar with. You know, an Orangeville kid that, you know, played for Orangeville, that pretty well played junior B his whole way up for whatever reasons. And then in his final year, I think he still played junior B, but Bruce called him up for the Minto and made quite an impression on him. So we were surprised he was there. We were actually looking at him at 30 when we took TD. So we were really surprised to see him there in the fourth round when we took him. So we were, you know, and I think Bruce thinks he might surprise a few people. So that's a potential for now pick. Same thing with Curtis, you know, another kid he's familiar with. Come in. These kids are in tough to find a spot with us just because of our depth right now. But you know, another kid that'll come in and be given an opportunity and see what he can do with. Scotty Delzato, I've known for a long time. You know, some depth up front. He'll come in and compete, and he can put the ball in the net. And we felt like in the fifth round, you know, based on talent, he shouldn't have been on the board. So that was our move there. And then we followed it. Final pick was Daniel Balavator, and you know, a face-off guy from Mimico. You know, a big boy. He'll definitely be able to handle himself size-wise in the NLL, and you know, who knows? We'll see. You know, give these kids an opportunity to come in and see what they can do and try and earn a spot.
No, that's awesome. And then, you know, you talk about your depth on your team right now. You guys made a lot of big signings this offseason. You re-signed a lot of players, including, you know, the three big ones I would say would be Rob Hellier to a 3-year contract, Brad Creed a 5-year extension, and then Challen Rogers to that big 10-year deal. And then you added Mitch DeSnew and Jason Noble also in some trades. Talk to me a little bit about your guys' plan this offseason and, you know, what you guys, what your outlook is going into this upcoming season.
Yeah, well, for mostly, you know, there was, because of the way the contracts work in our league, you know, I had a million guys that were up. That doesn't mean they were unrestricted free agents or things like this, but, you know, there was a lot of guys internally that I needed to redo contracts for. So that was definitely a focus. My other focus was, you know, to try and go out and add a couple premier defenders, you know, through trades and sacrifice those first round picks in the future to do that. But I feel like, you know, we got two stud defenders in return that are both in the prime of their career and are going to be here for the, a long time in the future. So, that was huge. And then, you got to remember for us, not only adding Mitch and Jason, but last year, Latrell Harris played half a game, Adam Jones played half a game, and Tommy Schreiber was, pretty well banged up for the entire year and missed a bunch of time too. So, I kind of feel like even before the draft class, we kind of added 5 players, and, we haven't really subtracted a lot from last year's lineup.
No, that's great. Well, we wish you the best of luck. Thank you for the time, Jamie, and good luck to the Toronto Rock this upcoming season.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, how's it going, Tanner? How are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. Thanks for hopping on. We appreciate it. First off, congratulations on getting drafted by the Roughnecks. You were drafted 5th overall, their first pick. What was going through your head when you heard your name called by the Roughnecks?
Yeah, I think that it's just sitting there and waiting to hear your name called. And you always grow up trying to play, obviously compete at the highest level possible. And to hear my name called is just a dream come true. And I think I'm really nothing I'm more excited about for sure than going to Calgary.
That's awesome. Have you talked with GM Mike Board or coach kind of about what kind of your role with the squad's going to look like?
Yeah, I think that I've spoken to Coach Kurt yesterday, and he just told me, that he thinks I'm going to be fitting in well, and to work with those left guys on the lefty side there on offense, he thinks that I'm going to fit in well. So I'm really excited to learn from those guys too, especially because they're some of the best in the game.
That's awesome. So let's kind of talk about what went into your decision to head back to Chapel Hill for an extra year and play with the boys one more season. What went into that decision?
Obviously, I like to play as much lacrosse as I can, and to think that our season last year we were doing really good, and I was feeling really good about the squad. And we had it's the first time though I really felt like that we had a true brothership on our team. So just having the opportunity to come back, I just couldn't pass it up.
That's awesome. And kind of before we ask our final question, on draft night, I saw you had a Flyers jersey behind you. I wanted to ask where I'm a big Flyers guy from Philly. So where'd your Flyers fan stuff go in?
It was basically my dad used to love the Broad Street Bullies back in the day. So that was all we ever watched growing up was the Philadelphia Flyers. So I was kind of morphed into a Flyers fan.
I love it. That's great.
That's awesome. And you mentioned too, you talked to a few of your future Roughnecks teammates. Have you talked to anybody, any former UNC guys like Chris Cloutier or a former Whitby teammate like Connor Kiernan?
Yeah, I've talked to them obviously throughout the whole process. They're kind of walking me through it and helping me along, and they've just been reaching out and congratulating my past teammates for sure.
Awesome. Well, Tanner, congratulations again on getting drafted. Best of luck. We look forward to seeing you in the final season at UNC and then eventually making the jump to the pros with the Roughnecks.
Thanks a lot.
Harrison, congratulations on getting drafted by Calgary. You are a Calgary native, so I'm sure it's pretty special for you. Calgary actually traded Tyson Bell to move up to the 14th and 20th pick and took you at the 14th. What was going through your head when you heard your name called?
Just honestly disbelief. It's obviously a dream to be going back home, playing in your hometown in front of all the people who've grown up kind of watching you. And it was an unbelievable feeling.
That's awesome. And you are returning to Stony Brook for one more season, which is awesome. Good, be a good experience for you. Several of your Stony Brook, alumni like Kevin Crowley, Challen Rogers, and then one of your former teammates, Rylan Reese, are in the league. There's been a handful of others too. Have any of them talked to you or reached out to you and given you any advice?
Yeah, all of them kind of reached out. I lived with Ryland Reese, so I've talked to him really the most, and he just said, enjoy it, and it's going to be a fun opportunity, and just listen to what the vets have to say and kind of just enjoy the whole experience.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Best of luck, with your final season in Stony Brook, and then, eventually with the Calgary Roughnecks. I appreciate the time.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Pro Lacrosse Talk Podcast. Today, I want to talk to you about our sponsor, Anchor. We've been using Anchor for the Pro Lacrosse Talk Podcast since the very start. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place, and better yet, it's free. They allow you to easily record and edit your podcast, and once it's published, they send it out to all the major networks such as Apple Podcasts,
Spotify, Stitcher, and many more. They also connect you with advertisers so you can start making money from your podcast right away. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast today, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Today I also want to talk to you about our affiliate Streaker Sports. Streaker Sports features an array of throwback t-shirts and apparel, including t-shirts of defunct major indoor lacrosse league teams such as the Baltimore Thunder, New York Saints, Syracuse Smash, and Boston Blazers. They also provide custom uniforms and shorts that are perfect for your rep team's upcoming lacrosse tournament or season. Better yet, we've teamed up with Streaker Sports to provide you with a special discount. Simply visit streakersports.com and use the code PLT to save 15% on your order today. All right, so those are the GMs, coaches, and some players and their thoughts on the NLL Draft. Very exciting, for players like Harrison and Tanner to get their names called, especially Harrison being, a Calgary native that drafted by the Roughnecks. I think it was huge. You could tell the excitement in his voice. And then all these GMs that, a lot of them felt like they really landed the players that they wanted. I think, of course they're going to say that they had a great draft anyway, but I think a lot of them meant it. I think they, you look at Jim Veltman was really surprised at the people that kept falling to their lap and that they felt like they had a great draft. He drafted his son, Chris, which, is really cool for him. Dan Carey made a lot of moves. They didn't draft too many players, only 5 overall, but they made a lot of moves and acquired 3 actual current NLL players, which I think was big for them going into next season. He talked about how they want to be competitive. But let's get your thoughts, Adam, on how this draft went. Let's start with Jeff Teat, number 1 overall pick. Everyone saw it coming. Generational talent. We're going to have to wait an extra year to see him because he is going back to Cornell. But, how excited are you to see Jeff Teat at the next level?
I'm really excited, and we certainly at Pro Lacrosse Talk were prepared, right? You tweeted out you were getting ready for the draft and already had the mock-up of Teat going 1 overall, so well prepared there, Hutton. But super excited. I'm even more excited not just for Jeff Teat, but for a guy like Tyson Gibson who went 1 overall last year. I'm really excited to see that tandem hit the floor come next season whenever Jeff's done at Cornell. Really excited for what they're building there. Add in a guy like Callum Crawford in free agency. The tide are rolling for sure.
Yeah, and then Orleman is going to be their new starting goaltender. I mean, they made a lot of moves this offseason. And yeah, we're certainly excited. We're going to have to wait a year again for Jeff Teat. But it's going to be worth the wait for sure. Let's talk about, 2 guys that went in this first round that are actually eligible upcoming season. Marshall Palace got taken 7th by the Rush, and then Ethan Riggs got taken by the Thunderbirds. These are 2 guys, young guys that decided to renounce their NCAA eligibility, and they're going to be, heading into the league this upcoming season. It looks like it's going to start in 2021 officially. We're not sure when they'll actually start playing games. Again, a lot of it's still up in the air, but this upcoming season, these 2 guys will be eligible. Anything you see from these 2 guys that excites you in terms of not only like their skill set, but also in terms of these 2 teams, the Thunderbirds and the Rush needs?
I know a lot of you Saskatoon fans out there were really bummed by the Ben McIntosh trade with the Wings this offseason, just by losing such a perennial scorer on that side. But you lose one, and he may be younger, but you add one in Marshall Palace, right? He had 151 points in Junior B last year. I loved watching him in the World Juniors with the Iroquois national team in 2019. So, I mean, he has time to grow. Obviously, he's still young, but he is going to be a perennial scorer for this Rush squad in the long run. I'm really, really excited to see him hit the floor in Saskatchewan come this season since he gets to play.
Yeah, no, and then Riggs, I think adding him, to the Thunderbirds defense is big. Obviously, Graham Hossack, reigning Defender of the Year again, phenomenal season. And, I think it really goes hand in hand with their whole mentality that unfinished business. That's been their hashtag going into this season. Like, they felt like they could have made a run for the title, and that got cut short last season. So I think they look to really just, reload going into the season. They're one of the teams that are already at the top. We'll talk a little bit about the Black Wolves too, that may have lost some pieces in the off season, but are, again, looking to just pick up where they left off at the end of this 2020 season. So, Ethan Riggs, I think, is going to be a big component of their defense, this upcoming season. We're going to talk a little bit about them adding Tyson Bell in a trade as well. But another thing that stood out to me in this draft in these first 2 rounds were that we saw some Americans go. Mac O'Keefe's name had been floating around, whether he would go in the first round or not. I know Stamper had him in his mock going in the first round, and he ended up going, to the Seals in that 13th pick. Again, they're going to have to wait another year. He's got another year at Penn State before he will go pro. But, he has some junior B experience. Played a summer there in the junior circuit. And then, obviously he's been a phenomenal scorer at Penn State. He's going to be super exciting to watch. I think his skill set's going to fit perfectly. When you have a guy who can score in so many different ways, he's going to just add to that team. And I think the Seals have proven that they're not afraid to look for those unconventional players. You look at a Connor Fields who really excelled, was one of the finalists for Rookie of the Year last season. And he's a traditional field lacrosse player. So I think it just shows that, Steve Gullett, Patrick Merrill are not afraid to take an unconventional approach. And then Charlie Kitchen, you heard from Glenn Clark, he's really high on Charlie Kitchen. Again, another guy returning to college at Delaware for another season. But it's great to see some of these U.S. players that maybe have minimal experience in the box game, really impress these coaches and are doing enough to warrant them a high draft pick. They talked about Glenn Clark he wanted Kitchen. They were willing to trade a few of their top picks away to get Jacob Ruest, again, another guy we're going to talk about in a little bit. But Kitchen was really their guy that they were eyeing, and they were really happy to get him in that second round. And then I love what the Swarm did, bolstering that defense, adding Robert Hudson, with that pick that they acquired by trading away Zed Williams and then Jeff Heinrich. 2 guys that were projected to possibly go, top 5, and they both fell to the Swarm. So I think that was a big get for them as well. And then, I mentioned Harrison Matsuoka, who you heard from, Calgary native. I think there's nothing better than when you see a guy get drafted by his hometown team. So those were kind of my takeaways from the top picks. I know you wanted to talk a little bit too about, there was only 5 goaltenders taken, which again is kind of a testament to this being a premium position. But what are your thoughts on the goaltenders taken and the goaltender position as a whole in the NLL?
Yeah, you mentioned it's a premium position currently. They kind of, an analyst think there's 7 guys that are in between the pipes that are those premier goalies, and they're looking to kind of build their pen a little bit. And the craziest thing throughout the whole draft, Mike Poulin was the guy for the Swarm that was announcing their picks, and he announced his potential successor in Cajun, Lane Hruska. So who's supposed to be, as Stamper would say, imagine Bob Watson. And other than my guy Dallas Elliott, those are the 2 guys when it comes to NLL goaltending that are the legends. So that's big praise for a guy like Hruska. So but that was pretty crazy to me that Pooley was the one to announce that. I wish he had been in his TikTok attire and his full pads for those announcements. But I'm excited to see what these goalies do. The Mammoth drafted a guy that's super young too. So there's a bunch of really exciting goalies coming up through the pipes. And it's been a heated topic, for how long now, that maybe there's not enough goalie skill. And I just don't see that being the case. I've watched enough games over the years, and obviously last year there were a lot of guys that were surprising some people. So I'm excited to see what these young guns can do, maybe sitting on the bench or some practice squads, learning from guys like Dylan Ward, Mike Poulin, and see where the position progresses going forward.
And, the other interesting thing is, like you said, people are debating whether there are enough starting goaltenders for this league. It doesn't really matter at this point. The league's growing. We got our 14th team in Fort Worth squad that is coming up. They're going to announce their team name in November. And then they announced that the 15th team is in the queue. So, we're getting 2 more franchises in the near future. But we mentioned some of these trades that happened. I was absolutely blown away by the Tyson Bell one. And I know, Teddy Jenner couldn't believe the Jacob Ruest one. So let's talk a little bit about this. And, we heard from Glenn Clark talking a little bit about his decision, that they were looking at Jacob Ruest for years. It wasn't just something that they were looking at this year. They wanted him for a while, and they landed him, as well as, Charlie Kitchen with that 24th pick. They gave up the 18th pick and the 33rd pick to Colorado, and Colorado ended up getting Ron John, who I'm sure they were itching to get him because a lot of people projected he could have gone in the first round. But talk to me a little bit about some of these trades. The Knighthawks make a lot of moves. We talked to Dan Carey. He's big on Matt Gilray. They gave up a lot to get him, but to him, they want to win now. To them, only winning 2 games wasn't acceptable last year. They want to be competitive now. And, he made some moves to get 3 NLL guys, around this draft. Two guys that they said they were eyeing for a while in, Jeff Wittick and Matt Gilray. And then John Wagner, he said they wanted for a while, but that kind of came into the fold during the draft. They re-inquired about him, and Riptide were willing to make a move. And, you heard from Jim Veltman, who said it was a difficult decision, but we saw a lot of moves. Which one do you think is going to have the biggest impact going into the season, though? Which trade, I guess, excited you the most?
I mean, they're all exciting for their own reasons, right? A guy like Jacob Ruest is going to go into New England and maybe replace, hopefully, some of the output they lost from a guy like Callum Crawford when he signed with the Riptide. So they needed to bolster that offense a little bit more. But, that was an interesting trade for me. From initial glance, it was like, wow, they got Jacob Ruest. But if Colorado was really interested in pinning a guy like Ron John with another addition they made this offseason in Zed Williams, I'm excited to see what they do. That trade looks like it could be something that works out really well for both sides. And you mentioned the Matt Gilray trade to the Knighthawks. They gave up a lot, but they had a pretty big pen of picks, and they are looking to build on last year, and it wasn't as successful as they wanted to, and they wanted to bring in more guys with a lot of veteran experience, and a guy like Matt Gilray obviously will do just that. So I'm excited to see what these Knighthawks can do when they hit the floor again this season, and I don't expect it to be a 2-win team.
No, absolutely. And I think, it kind of shows too, Dan Carey was, again, thinking about this season a lot. A lot of these teams that maybe have performed a little bit better than the Knighthawks did last year were content drafting guys that are going back to college for a year and then getting them, in 2 seasons from now. Whereas the Knighthawks, they acquired 3 guys that can, play for them from the get-go this upcoming season. And I think that was important for them. They got a guy in Ryan Smith who's going to be great when he comes to the league in 2 years, but he's going back to Robert Morris, for his extra year. So that was who they got with their 3rd overall pick, but he made the moves to make sure that they can be competitive next season. And I think, there's something to be said about that. And then again, the Tyson Bell one, blew my mind. I did not know that, that Calgary was going to give up a guy like Tyson Bell, but when Calgary gave him up, I think that's a huge win for the Thunderbirds, but they ended up taking Harrison Matsuoka and then Ethan Ticehurst, 2 transition players that can, hopefully step in and kind of fill that void eventually. Again, they're both returning to college for another season, so they're going to have to wait, but they're kind of playing the long game with that. And then, the Thunderbirds get an impact player again in Tyson Bell. Unfinished business is the theme, I think, for that Thunderbirds team. Curt Styres, he wants to win. He wants to win now, and I think they have the team to do it. So I'm excited to see them going into next season for sure. Any sleepers, Adam, in this draft that you want to talk about? We saw some more Americans taken in later rounds, guys that maybe didn't have box experience, but we think, might be able to make an impact in the box game. Any names that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, 2 names that every Field fan knows very well, not only just from this past PLL season, but just the record books on the college side, are Michael Sowers and Grant Amon, and they both were drafted by the New England Black Wolves. So fans, the American fans out there may be tuning in just because their interest in watching those 2 guys play on the floor together, which is super exciting. Sowers has pass box experience. Grant Amon doesn't currently, but his stick skills are so phenomenal that I think he'd transition really well to the box game. And, a lot of fans were curious if the Wings were going to go with Amon. They didn't draft Amon. They did stick with the Penn State side of things, drafted Dylan Folds, and the pick before that drafted Brian Costabile. So it's super exciting to see this influx of American talent into the league, and it's just growing year by year. And I'm really excited to see those 2 guys in particular. Gosh, if they hit the floor together, we talked when we were talking, we had our MLL draft show about the potential with the Boston Cannons draft it's pretty similar when it comes to the success rate of those college players. So if Grant Ament and Sowers hit the floor together, watch out, New England fans.
Yeah, no, and New England in this offseason added Brad Smith and Jules Henningberg as well. So again, Glenn Clark, as he mentioned, in the interview, he's not afraid to go out and find some American talent where maybe be overlooked. So kudos for him for that. I really liked Matt Gaudette in the third round going to the Thunderbirds. Again, another guy that can play this season for the Thunderbirds. He's not returning to college. Probably maybe fell a little bit because of the controversy around what he said to Blaze in the PLL. Controversy that we don't think is really a controversy at all. We've talked about it ad nauseum about. But I love that pick. Again, the Thunderbirds, they select some guys that are able to make an impact now. They trade for some guys that are able to make an impact now. Again, sticking with the theme, I think they're going to be scary this upcoming season. I think Micah Kersey is going to have a really solid squad on his hand. Not only the guys returning, but the guys that they added this offseason. And I think Gaudette's going to thrive. He took a step back from the box game for a little bit during his career at Yale, but perennial scorer, probably would have broken the record at Yale for scoring if he would have stayed, if they would have had a season this past year, and did wonders for the Chrome. And he gets in people's heads. I mean, they can say whatever they want about his trash talk. Box lacrosse probably has the most trash talk of anyone. I hope they start miking up those guys. Maybe that's why they haven't, though, is because we get some more controversy like that. But again, I think that was a no-brainer for them, and I think the type of mentality that the Thunderbirds have, where they're a hard-nosed team. Stephen Keogh, he loves showboating after goals, the turf swipes. I mean, they are fun to watch, and I think Matt Gaudette's going to fit into that group really, really nicely. So kudos to that pick. Adam, I know you really liked Jacob Patterson too, another late round pick. Talk to me a little bit about him and his addition to this league.
Yeah, a guy out of Albany is returning for a fifth year with them, but I mean, he's just an absolute producer for that Great Dane squad. He had over 50 points his junior year, almost 50 points his sophomore year, and last year he had 20 points in 5 games. So he just go on YouTube, check out some of Jacob's highlights on there. He's a fantastic player, and I think he's going to be a really awesome addition to the SEAL squad that added a lot of NCAA talent, right? Trey LeClaire. We talked about Mac O'Keefe already. Dox Aiken was drafted by the SEALs too. So, I mean, this SEAL squad is bringing some awesome talent, maybe not all with a ton in terms of Dox and Jacob with the box side of things. But I'm really excited to see if he has a chance to break the roster with the SEALs.
No, absolutely. And, another guy that Reese Eddy taken by the Swarm, they're hoping that he can make an impact, be maybe like a Joel White and make a solid transition as an LSM now going into the box game or whatever on defense. I really like Miles Sova pick as well that the Swarm selected. I really like that pick just because he's a pure goal scorer. Again, like a big body that you can stick in the middle of the floor. If he starts to develop, the two-man game a little bit, it's going to take him some time, but I think he's got the physical presence that he can thrive in the box game if given a chance. We saw what he did on the Outlaws this season. So he's a late round pick that I really, really liked. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I really enjoyed this draft. I think once we get back on the floor, hopefully it'll be early in 2021. It's going to be a fun ride again for this upcoming NLL season. Yeah, so that wraps up our NLL recap. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please, subscribe and, leave us a review if you don't already. We're going to be continuing our NLL recaps, off-season recaps. The last one we did was with the Warriors. Our next one will be the Calgary Roughnecks. And we want to just keep the content train going until we do, have a start date for this season. But very exciting. Again, we have the Fort Worth team coming out. So I think that would be a good stepping off point from here, guys. Leave us a review and let us know what you think the Fort Worth team should be called. The rumors are that they could be called potentially the Herd, the Stampede, or the Panthers. It is Panther City is what Fort Worth is known is their nickname. So let us know what you want them to be called. Maybe you think of another name that it's not one of those three that they should be called. Put it in the reviews. Maybe it'll be featured on our next upcoming podcast. But we're looking forward to that announcement in November when they announce
the team name, logo, and color scheme of that 14th franchise. We'll have to wait another year for them to take the floor, but very, very exciting stuff there. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope you tune in next time to Pro Lacrosse Talk. Today I also want to talk to you about our affiliate Smart Backstop. Smart Backstop is different from traditional backstops in that it actually attaches to your net, preventing any missed shots up to 4 feet high and wide of the net. It can also be easily folded down behind the net for easy storage. Plus, this thing is built to last and is used by some of the top college teams. I'm someone who spent countless hours chasing missed shots in my backyard as a kid, and I wish I had this on my net. It would have saved me a lot of time and money on lost lacrosse balls. The best thing is right now Smart Backstop is giving listeners $20 off their purchase and free shipping. Just use the code PLT at checkout, place your order, and then get practicing.